They were once the faces everyone knew, the stars that lit up marquees, earned Oscars, and shaped the very idea of fame. But what happens after the curtain falls? One was the first movie star and died with no one to bury her. Another kissed Elvis, then vanished into silence behind convent walls. And one won 2 Oscars, then disappeared before 30. This isn't just about forgotten names. It's about the cost of the spotlight and what's left when it fades. These are the stories Hollywood never wanted you to remember. And tonight, we're bringing them back to light. Clara Bow, the silent star who died alone. She was lightning in a red dress. With wide eyes and untamed energy, Clara Bow didn't just star in the silent era, she defined it. Dubbed the It Girl, she exploded onto the screen in the 1920s, pulling in millions at the box office. Her face sold everything from cosmetics to cinema tickets. For a time, she was the most bankable star in Hollywood. But fame was never kind to Clara. Born into poverty in Brooklyn, she grew up with an abusive father and a mentally unstable mother. When stardom came, it was like fire in a powder keg. Studios exploited her, tabloids stalked her, and her natural Brooklyn accent clashed with the rise of talkies. By the early 1930s, she was already being pushed aside, labeled too rough, too scandalous, too much. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder and battling nervous breakdowns, Clara disappeared from Hollywood. She lived the rest of her life in seclusion, alone, medicated, watching television reruns of a world that had moved on without her. Her husband, cowboy actor Rex Bell, built a political career while Clara became a shadow. She died of a heart attack in 1965. She was just 60. No grand tribute, no national mourning, just silence for a woman who once made the world scream. Her most haunting line came in an interview years after retirement. "They yelled at me to act, but what was I supposed to be? I never knew." Edmund Gwen, Santa Claus in life, forgotten in death. When Edmund Gwen stepped onto the screen in Miracle on 34th Street as Kris Kringle, a nation believed in magic again. With a warm gaze and gentle voice, he wasn't playing Santa Claus. He was Santa Claus. The performance won him an Oscar, and millions adored him. But magic fades fast in Hollywood. Though he had a long and respected career on stage and screen, Gwen was never wealthy. He lived modestly, never married, and never had children. In his final years, work dried up. His body, once agile and expressive, gave way to arthritis and bronchial illness. He spent his last months in a small Los Angeles home, mostly alone, cared for by a few close friends. He passed away in 1959 at the age of 81. There were no headlines, no studio tributes, just a simple cremation and a quiet goodbye. His name faded with the decades, remembered only when Miracle aired at Christmas, with no one knowing the gentle man behind the beard had once struggled to make ends meet. His final words were whispered to a friend at his bedside. "Dying is easy. Comedy is hard." Then he smiled, and the curtain fell. Thelma Todd, the blonde comedienne who died with the engine running. She was beautiful, quick-witted, and impossible to ignore. Thelma Todd rose to fame in the early 1930s as a comedic actress alongside the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy. With her sharp timing and golden looks, she was one of the few women who could match male comedians joke for joke and steal the scene while doing it. But Thelma's charm masked a darker story. She was trapped in a toxic marriage, entangled with mob connections, and under constant surveillance by men who wanted control over her life and her nightclub. She received threats, was rumored to be watched, and began expressing fear for her safety. On December 16, 1935, Thelma Todd was found dead inside her luxury car, parked in her garage, with the engine still running. Officially, the cause was carbon monoxide poisoning. But whispers of murder began immediately. She was only 29. There were no definitive answers. Some said it was suicide, others a mob hit. One theory pointed to her jealous ex-husband. Hollywood didn't press for answers. The case was closed quickly, and the headlines moved on. Her funeral was quiet, her legacy buried beneath a cloud of mystery. She once said in an interview, "People laugh when I talk, but they never know when I'm serious." Thelma Todd was a star who made people laugh, even as her own life unraveled in the shadows. Tom Conway. The voice of sophistication, silenced by drink. In the 1940s, Tom Conway was the very image of British refinement. With a velvet voice and aristocratic bearing, he replaced his brother George Sanders in the Falcon detective series and lent his calm charm to films like Cat People and I Walked with a Zombie. He was never a superstar, but he was always there, always dependable, always dignified. But dignity didn't pay the bills. Conway struggled with alcoholism for decades. As the roles dried up, so did his money. His suave exterior gave way to desperation. He checked into hospitals repeatedly, hoping for recovery, but Hollywood had stopped calling. By the 1960s, he was living in a single-room apartment, legally blind and relying on Social Security to survive. Friends from the Screen Actors Guild occasionally sent small checks. His brother, once close, refused to speak to him. He died in 1967, penniless and alone, in a Los Angeles convalescent home. His body went unclaimed for days. There were no tributes, no re-releases, no Hollywood handshakes. Just silence for the man who once gave audiences comfort in the dark. A colleague once said, Tom Conway had a voice like trust, and yet no one came when he needed them most. They called her the Body. Marie MacDonald wasn't just another blonde bombshell. She was engineered for attention. With an hourglass figure and a smile that stopped traffic, she graced screens in the 1940s and 50s in light comedies and musicals. Men adored her. Women envied her. But what the public saw was only the surface. Behind the glamorous facade was a woman unraveling. Marie married 7 times, twice to the same man. She longed for serious roles, but studios kept her in decorative, shallow parts. Feeling trapped and invisible, she spiraled into addiction and emotional instability. In 1957, she made headlines for claiming she was kidnapped, only to later say she'd fabricated the story. The scandal destroyed what was left of her credibility in Hollywood. Directors stopped calling. Producers distanced themselves. On October 21, 1965, she was found dead in her home in Hidden Hills. A bottle of pills. A quiet room. She was only 42. The cause was ruled an accidental overdose. No one gave a eulogy at her funeral, no final applause. She once said, "I'm not just a body, I'm a person too." But Hollywood didn't listen. It sold her image and buried her identity. William Haines, the star who chose love over fame. In the late 1920s, William Haines was one of MGM's brightest stars, boyish, witty, and wildly popular. Audiences adored him in films like Brown of Harvard and Show People. He had the looks of a leading man and the comic instincts of a natural entertainer. But William Haines carried a secret, one he refused to hide. He was openly gay, living with his partner, Jimmy Shields, in an era when studios demanded silence. MGM gave him an ultimatum: leave Jimmy and protect your career, or walk away. Haines chose love. He was blacklisted overnight. Offers vanished. Gossip columns turned on him. He never acted again. But he didn't vanish. Haines reinvented himself as a successful interior designer to Hollywood's elite. He and Jimmy stayed together for nearly 50 years. Behind the closed doors of the rich and powerful, they built homes and kept their dignity intact. Still, the industry never gave him a second chance. When he died in 1973, his obituary barely mentioned his film career. Joan Crawford once called theirs the happiest marriage in Hollywood. But happiness came at the cost of legacy. William Haines chose authenticity over applause and was forgotten for it. Virginia Bruce, the voice Hollywood no longer heard. She was the first to sing "I've Got You Under My Skin" on screen, with her smooth vocals, icy blonde elegance, and quiet poise. Virginia Bruce was a fixture of 1930s musicals and romantic dramas. She starred opposite stars like James Stewart and John Barrymore. But fame is rarely patient. As the years passed, Virginia's popularity declined. Her marriage to screen idol John Gilbert ended in scandal and sadness. She left the industry briefly to raise her daughter, and when she returned, Hollywood had moved on. The big studios offered her bit parts, then nothing at all. She spent her later years in near-total obscurity, living in a modest home, rarely interviewed, almost never recognized. By the 1980s, she was almost entirely forgotten by the industry she helped shape. When she died in 1982 at the age of 71, there were no major retrospectives, no public memorials, just an obituary in a local paper. Virginia Bruce once said, "They remember the voice, but not the woman behind it." She wasn't bitter, just forgotten. and sometimes that's worse. Monty Morland, the comedian Hollywood left behind. He could make a room explode with laughter before he said a word. Monty Morland was one of the most prolific black actors of the 1930s and 40s, known for his quick timing, expressive face, and roles in dozens of films. He was funny, but always typecast. Hollywood gave him work, but only on its own terms. Porters, sidekicks, buffoons. He made audiences laugh, but never let them see the full scope of his talent. When the civil rights movement pushed for better representation in film, Morland's comedic persona was labeled outdated, even offensive. Overnight, he went from overworked to unemployed. He tried to revive his career in low-budget films and stage performances, but the big offers never came back. In his later years, he lived quietly in Los Angeles, battling declining health and financial struggles. When he died in 1973, he was buried without fanfare. No awards, no retrospectives, just silence. A fellow performer once said, "Monty could have been Chaplin, he just never got the chance. He made America laugh, but Hollywood never let him be anything more than a punchline." Jean Spangler, the starlet who vanished without a trace. She was young, beautiful, and just beginning to taste fame. Jean Spangler had minor roles in films with stars like Kirk Douglas and Betty Grable, but her ambitions were far greater. She wanted to be a leading lady, and had the face for it. Then one night, in October 1949, she left home and never returned. Her purse was found near the entrance of Griffith Park. Inside was a cryptic note. "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." That was the last trace of Jean Spangler. The case drew sensational headlines. Some believed Kirk referred to Kirk Douglas, who denied any involvement. Others whispered of an illegal abortion or ties to the mob. No body was found, no charges, just speculation and then silence. Jean was 26. Her name faded into Hollywood lore as one more beautiful woman who disappeared before anyone really knew who she was. In one of her last interviews, she said, "I think something big is coming for me soon." And she was right, but not in the way she imagined. Louise Reiner, the two-time Oscar winner. Hollywood forgot. She made history. Louise Reiner was the first actor to win back-to-back Academy Awards, Best Actress for The Great Ziegfeld, 1936, and The Good Earth, 1937. Her performances were delicate, layered, powerful. At 28, she was hailed as the future of acting, and then she walked away. Louise hated the studio system. She despised how MGM treated her like a commodity, not an artist. She clashed with Louis B. Mayer, demanded meaningful roles, and was labeled difficult. The offers stopped. Her career collapsed before she was 30. She moved to Europe, performed in theater, lived quietly. But the industry never came calling again. Though she lived to 104, her name vanished from mainstream memory. Many only know her as a trivia fact. The woman who won 2 Oscars then disappeared. Louise once said, "The Oscars brought me nothing. Nothing but loneliness." Hollywood loved her trophies, but not her voice. And Vorak, the actress who fought back and paid the price. She was fierce, magnetic, and a natural on screen. And Vorak electrified audiences in Scarface, 1932, and 3 on a Match. She could go toe-to-toe with anyone. But Anne wanted more than fame. She wanted freedom. She rebelled against her studio contract, fought for fair pay, and vanished overseas with her husband without permission. Warner Bros. Punished her. Roles dried up, and just like that, her rising career hit a wall. She came back, but Hollywood didn't forgive. In later years, she took supporting roles, then none at all. She faded into obscurity, working in real estate just to get by. She died in 1979 of cancer, alone, unrecognized, her legacy forgotten. At her funeral, there were no celebrities, no spotlight, just a few quiet mourners. She once wrote, "If you don't play their game, you disappear." She didn't play, and they made sure she was gone. Brdle, the comedian, audiences forgot to remember. He was a vaudeville hit, a film favorite in the early talkie era. With his fake Swedish accent and wide-eyed innocence, Brdle made 20th Century Fox audiences roar with laughter in the 1930s. But comedy trends changed. His brand of humor aged poorly. By the 1940s, Brdle was old-fashioned, an echo from another time. Studios stopped calling. He made small appearances here and there, but his fame never returned. He spent his later years living modestly, doing stand-up gigs in forgotten corners of Los Angeles. When he died in 1964, few remembered who he was. No one celebrated what he'd once meant to early American cinema. One critic said he made millions laugh and then was erased like a punchline no one got anymore. Brdle didn't do anything wrong. He just outlived the style that made him famous. Florence Lawrence, the first movie star who died without a name. She was the very first. Florence Lawrence is considered the first movie star to ever be publicly named and marketed. In the early 1910s, she was a sensation. Crowds chased her. Studios built empires around her face. But the system she helped create forgot her fast. As she aged, roles vanished. A botched suicide attempt left her emotionally and physically scarred. She worked as a makeup artist to survive. No royalties, no protection, just silence. In 1938, she died by suicide, ingesting ant paste in her small Los Angeles apartment. She was 52. There was no public memorial, no studio tribute. The woman who started the celebrity era died in obscurity. She once said, "Fame has a short memory, but poverty never forgets your address." Turhan Bay, the exotic star who vanished into smoke. In the 1940s, Turhan Bay was Hollywood's idea of exotic charm. Nicknamed the Turkish Delight, he starred in swashbucklers and fantasy films. Arabian Nights, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Women swooned. Studios saw dollar signs, but his roles were all fantasy, never real characters. Always a costume. When tastes changed and America tired of Orientalist tropes, his career ended. He returned to Vienna, studied photography, lived quietly. For decades, no one asked about him. No one cared. In the early 1990s, he made a brief return in small TV roles. Then, silence again. He died in 2012. Few noticed. He once said, "I was a dream they sold. When the dream ended, so did I." Would you like me to compile these 5 new stories into your Part 3 script document, or would you prefer I continue with 5 more?